SpectreVision Radio.
Hello, friends. How are we all doing tonight? All right. Welcome to the Philosophical Research Society. My name is Alex. I am lead programmer here and programmer of 7th House Screenings at PRS. Who is here at the Philosophical Research Society for the first time tonight? Whoa. All right. Well done, SpectreVision. Bringing in the newbies. Appreciate it. Well, let me tell you a bit about where you are because it is a far-out space for this event tonight. So we are in our 91st year here at the Philosophical Research Society. You guys are here right on time. So the space was founded, or the society was founded in 1934 by a man named Manly Palmer Hall, who's a comparative religion, spirituality, philosophy scholar, author, lecturer, and philosopher in his own right. He dedicated his life to traveling the world, learning firsthand from gurus, monks, yogis, ascetics of all sorts, and bringing esoteric knowledge from around the world to the West at a time where it did not have direct access to that. His idea was to present people with all of these beliefs, mythos, archetypes from around the world to show them the one truths, the commonalities between them, and allow these seekers to sort of forge their own non-denominational path, connecting the dots themselves. But anyway, to tell you a bit about tonight, would you please welcome to the stage SpectreVision co-founders Daniel Noah and Elijah Wood.
And your son is 5?
He's 5.
Right. Okay.
I'll ask him what he wants to hear, and he'll say, "Enter Sandman." For a while, it was Weezer version. Controversial. Weezer did cover the song quite exactly.
Yeah.
And then he was really into that, and then he was like, original version.
Right.
and I'd go to play the Weezer version, he'd be like, I don't want the Weezer version. Anyway.
Yeah.
I digress. Hi, everyone.
Hi. Hello. Good to see you. Welcome back to our next Supernatural Story Slam. Was anybody here for our Ghost Story Slam? Yeah.
Nice sweater.
So the whole concept here is it's like Mortified or The Moth, but for the paranormal. SpectreVision, for those of you who don't know, we mostly have made movies, but we've ventured into podcasting, and our movies are genre movies that are generally about esoteric and supernatural subjects in the world of fiction. The podcast network is allowing us to explore these same subjects in the real world, and I think if there's a mission behind it, it's to create a home, a community for people who are experiencers of the paranormal, to normalize it, to create a safe space for us all to talk about it openly. So tonight we are unpacking the terrifying phenomenon of sleep paralysis and all of the shadow entities that introduce themselves. Has anyone here experienced sleep paralysis?
Oh, wow. Holy shit.
If you experience it and are here tonight, are you also feeling anxious about, yes. So some of you after tonight will experience sleep paralysis. You're welcome. All right, we're gonna kick things off with our very dear friend, the esteemed documentary filmmaker, Rodney Ascher, who brought sleep paralysis to the masses with his amazing documentary, The Nightmare. Everyone has a special theme song tonight. So how did you discover sleep paralysis?
Well, I didn't discover it so much as it discovered me, right? That when I was in college, 19 or 20 or so, there was a night I woke up and I couldn't move and I sensed something coming towards me. And soon enough, it was in the room and I could see it as clearly as I see any of you. And it was, the black a completely black, shadowy figure of a person. Recently, I've seen images. Have you seen that? There's a name for it, that kind of ultra black paint that they've discovered that when you cover something goes completely into silhouette, like no matter how it's lit, you don't see any of the three-dimensional modeling or backlighting. It's just...
Yeah, it's what people describe as blacker than black, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's how this thing looked, when it walked slowly and was leaning over me. And I have since learned a fair amount about the phenomenon, but on that night, I didn't think that I was having a sleep disorder. I thought I was being menaced by a supernatural intruder that had come to drag me off to hell, right? And that's what I continued to believe for a year or 2 years, and just sort of making peace with the fact of, well, I guess that's something that happened. And I didn't know that it happened to anybody else, right? And there was the day when I read an article about sleep paralysis, and I realized that what's really happening, or what's also happening, depending on your point of view, is as people move through stages of REM sleep, if it doesn't work properly, you're a sleepwalker. But if it doesn't wear off while you're waking up, what you have is sleep paralysis, and it's frequently accompanied by sort of dream-like images that are sort of superimposed over the real world. People hear voices or animal sounds or electrical buzzing and often see these sorts of sinister figures. I have to say, once I realized that it was a sleep disorder, my anxiety about it just disappeared. The bubble popped, and I went on with my life and said, well, I guess I hadn't lured this awful spirit into my life. There's some terrible series of mistakes that I had made. I just had some anxiety-induced kind of weird sleep thing.
You just keep telling yourself that.
Well, of course, the freaky thing about it, every time there'd be a YouTube video about sleep paralysis or even just sort of vaguely related to it, there'd be 1,000 replies. This happened to me, and this is what I saw, and this was what it was like. There would be Reddit threads about it, and what was the freaky thing about it is that so many people see very similar things, right? And it gets to the point where there's sort of a taxonomy.
Like a cast of characters.
Yeah, well, there's the Shadow Man who I saw, who's kind of the classic. There's Hat Man who wears a fedora, who looks suspiciously like Freddy Krueger. There's the old hag. There are little gremlins, and like one of them very famously appears, and there's a painting from, I think, 1781 by Henry Fuseli called The Nightmare, which a lot of people see as a representation of sleep paralysis.
Well, and philosophically, and you and I have this debate pretty frequently, is that certainly one can say, well, this is a neurological phenomenon, but then there's a certain point at which it kind of begs credulity. So there's a neurological phenomenon where we all happen to hallucinate the same 3 or 4 characters? I don't buy it.
Well, it is the freakiest thing about it if you're trying to look for a strictly medical, psychological, neurological kind of explanation. I know there's a theory that I've heard that I really like. It also doesn't explain, it explains a lot, though it doesn't explain everything, which is that it's like a primal memory unlocked, and that supposedly babies see silhouettes before they can really see 3 dimensions and colors and more complicated figures. And if you think about some of those simplest baby books, those little cardboard books, some of them are just black silhouettes on white poster board, right? And if you can imagine a baby's point of view inside of a crib, there's often figures leaning over them.
With a hat?
That is exactly what the guy in The Nightmare said when I brought that up to him.
With a hat?
My father never wore a hat, and he frequently saw the Hat Man.
I think the lengths that we will go to find a terrestrial explanation for some of these phenomenon can become hilarious. And I think we'll see tonight that we're going to meet some of these characters in tonight's stories.
I think where you hit the wall is where you try to be definitive. About anything, one way. Like I don't find a strictly psychological, neurological, medical view satisfying, but a lot of the others are pretty speculative too.
All right, so we're going to fill in these 2 chairs. There's going to be a panel of 5 of us up here, and we're going to be here to support our storytellers and ask them questions when they're done. So let's bring up the other members of our panel, Lizzy Cooperman and Craig Cackowski.
I specifically requested the Weezer version of this song. But I will settle for Eurythmics. Fine.
Craig, what qualifies you to be here, sir?
Absolutely nothing. No, I did experience, when I was around 15 years old, around 3 a.m. every night, I would wake up paralyzed in my sleep. I don't know what the technical term would be.
Paralyzed.
Paralyzed, thank you. Thank you, Rodney. I had bunk beds still at the time, so I'm looking at the slats of the bed above me. I can't move, and I feel this presence moving down the hall toward my room, slowly, surely. I can't move. I know that it wants to hurt me. It doesn't have a face or a body or a hat. I can't see it, I can just feel it. My door is usually closed, and at the moment where it reaches the door, it moves through the door, and then I wake up, I'm sweating profusely, I'm crying sometimes. And this happened about every night for a year when I was 15. And I would not remember it in the morning. I'd fall back asleep right away, not tell my parents, not tell a friend. But then every night when it would start happening, I'd be like, oh yeah, this is that thing that happens to me every night. And it went away after a while, after about a year of experiencing it. Years later, I'm in my 40s. My sister, who is 8 years younger than me, she's also an actor and writer, and we have a bunch of mutual friends in the comedy world. It's around Halloween. We're all telling ghost stories. And my sister's like, I've never really told this to anyone, but when I was around 15, for about a year, I felt this presence in our house, and the one detail that gets me is, like, in my story, it was moving down the hall and into my room. She's the bedroom right here. In her story, it moved past her bedroom and into mine. So in both of our experiences, it covered the same path. It's classic sleep paralysis symptoms, and then saw your movie not long after that, and that kind of confirmed it. But I don't rule out that it is allowing you to commune with some other reality.
That simultaneously, if it was indeed sleep paralysis, to have that simultaneously, not know it, not be able to not talk about it then, and then it to correspond.
Well, 8 years apart. I'm 8 years older. It happened to her when she was 15.
Oh, for fuck's sake!
Not when she was 7. When it was happening, I was out of the house at this point. When she was at the same age, she experienced a similar phenomenon. Same house. I'm not in the bedroom anymore.
Right.
Same path of the spirit or entity.
Still weirdly connected. That's
yes.
Bizarre.
Wow. And Lizzy Cooperman.
Hello.
What entitles you to be here?
I'm Craig's demon. Everyone needs a side hustle. And I was wearing a hat that
My sister's name is Liz, by the way.
No way.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. See, it's all checking out here. I am a tarot reader. If you couldn't guess by the palazzo pants. Maybe the undercurrent of financial instability. I do tarot. I'm not a paralyzer. I don't know what you call yourselves. I'm here to bring these demons to justice. I'm present. I'm here to be present and open.
Thank you, guys. Let's start welcoming our very, very brave storytellers to the stage. First up, we have Brock. Brock, welcome.
You guys about covered everything in my experience, so this is kind of...
You want to just sit down?
Yeah, just sit back down. Be good for you. So it's 2009, and I'm laying in bed staring at the ceiling, and I'm having a borderline panic attack because in the morning I'm moving to Thailand. And I'd never been to Thailand. I didn't know much about Thailand. I didn't ever leave the country even. So, I didn't lead a sheltered life, but it was like I had a comfort zone and I had a lane, and Thailand was definitely not in that lane. And I had a girlfriend at the time that I was obsessed with. Her name was Maris. I had like a 2-year campaign to bed her, to get her to fall in love with me. I actually scratch the bed part, to fall in love with me. And she wanted to go to Thailand. She liked to experience the world. And she talked me into going. And she talked me out of my comfort zone a lot. A couple years prior to that, when we were just friends, she wanted to go to a jazz club. I'm 21 years old. I have no business being in a jazz club, especially not in Knoxville, Tennessee. That wasn't the scene. But I go because I love her, and at the time, we're just friends, and I'm in the midst of my 2-year campaign. So I go to the jazz club. I'm wearing an ill-fitting suit, drinking martinis, 21 years old, and wearing a fedora. And I'd never drank a martini. I'd never been to a jazz club, and I definitely never wore a fedora before. That's not true. It was the early 2000s, and I definitely wore a fedora a couple times. But I was so into her, and so I'd do it, you know. And we were friends, and we told each other stuff that we, you know, didn't tell other people. I told her about my sleep paralysis and kind of the atypical nature of it, which I'm realizing now isn't so atypical. But most people in their lives experience it a couple times, you know, a handful of times, maybe 5 times, maybe once, maybe never. For me, from the age of 15 to now 41, I've experienced it like 1,000+ times. Like, not exaggerating, 1,000+ times. When I was 15 and it started, it was like once or twice a year. As I got older, once or twice a month, and then more times a month, and then more times a week. And then when I was in college, it kind of like hit this stride. And I was having it multiple times a day because in between classes, I was taking naps, sometimes multiple naps. I was a sleepy boy. And I would tell her, you know, about what it felt like. And, you know, you might also think, like, in that experience 1,000 times, that the, like, fear of it would wear off and that it would eventually become like, it's just another thing that I suffer from. But it never did. It was scary every single time. Like, it still is to this day. Every single time it was terrifying. And my experience with it was, like, pretty simple, right? A lot of people see things, you know, you heard about a lot of things that we see. The man in the hat, the old hag, all these things. I never saw anything, aside from one time. But hundreds of times, I never saw anything. Here's basically what my episode was like, every single time. I'd wake up, I'm paralyzed, my chest is heavy, my head is heavy, I feel like a warmth in my mouth, a warmth behind my eyes, and the room looks like this, like it's as lucid as it could be being awake. And sometimes, like, there would be a difference in the room, like there'd be a clock on the wall, or like a door that wasn't supposed to be there. And sometimes it would, like, let me know, like, hey, you're about to have sleep paralysis, as if the like paralyzing fear wasn't enough. I know I don't own a fucking cuckoo clock, so it's about to go down. And it would always be like this auditory thing, and I'd always be on my back every single time. Every single time I was on my back when it happened. And I would have this sound that sounded like someone breaking into my house and then just, like, ravaging all my stuff. And it would get more and more intense, and it would become like grunting, and it would get like animalistic, and things would get louder, and I'd be hearing stuff breaking, you know, stomping around, banging off the walls, like just utter chaos. And it would get closer and closer to me, and the fear would, like, intensify to a level that was like not like nothing else in, like, the waking life for me. And then as, like, the sounds got louder and the chaos got more and more real and visceral, like, the fear became something that was unmanageable. And I would try and wake up by, like, flexing every muscle in my body, like trying to scream, and I would just end up just, like, making this guttural kind of noise. And when it kind of reached its point, it would be right in my right ear. All this stuff always happened, like, out of the right side. And I would feel its breath on my face, and I could hear it, like, raspy breathing. And I always closed my eyes every single time, because this sounds totally irrational, but to you guys, it seems like we've all suffered from this. I always closed my eyes because I had a very real fear that if I opened my eyes and I saw what it was that was breathing in my face, that I would die, like, for real. So I would wake up eventually, like, you know, I would always wake up, but sometimes it'd be earlier than others, and sometimes it'd be later, but I'd wake up and, you know, rinse and repeat for years. And I would tell Maris this, And she was like not judgmental. She was supportive. She's like, let's process this. Let's figure out what it is. What is this thing that's like in your ear? Why is it happening so much now? And her and I ended up getting together. My campaign was a success. She fell in love with me. I truly think it was because of the fedora, but she would never admit to that. And she talked me into doing a lot of things that I wasn't comfortable with. Wait, that sounds horrible. That sounds weird. She would talk me into doing things that were outside of my comfort zone. I think that sounds a little bit better, and it's like not a weird thing. Like she would expand my horizon. She would have me experience the world in a way that I was outside of my lane. And like that was exciting and that was fun, but it was scary and it created anxiety around it. Sometimes it would just be like too much. And I'm like, let's go eat at the Ethiopian restaurant. The new one. You haven't eaten Ethiopian, let's go do that. And I'm like, let's grab a burger. We don't have to go do that. She's like, let's go out to the Fall Creek Falls and go dance in the waterfalls or some hippie shit like that. And I'm like, no, we could go to the dive bar that we go to every single night and have a burger, But it was a give and take. And eventually she talked me into moving to Thailand. And I was excited about it deep down, but I was petrified. The most anxiety I'd ever felt my entire life. And it's 2009, I'm laying on the bed and I'm looking at the ceiling having a panic attack. And I eventually fall asleep. And of course, because this is the scariest moment of my life I come to, and it's sleep paralysis, right? Every single time I've had sleep paralysis in the past, I've been on my back. And there was a little change with this one. And it might seem minute to you, but it was actually pretty huge. This time I was on my right side. And if you can remember, the right side was where everything came from when I was on my back. So I'm, laying on my right side. And I just never experienced it like that before. And like 3 inches from my face, there is like a couch cushion like that you put your arm on, because I'm sleeping on a pull-out couch. There's like a couch cushion, like a big loaf of bread. And I don't know if you've ever seen a woman in third trimester with a baby, but when the baby starts like pushing at the skin at the belly, and you're like seeing the little nubs and the knees and the elbows, that's what was happening with this pillow. And I have to also stress to you again, I had never seen anything. So this is the scariest moment of my entire life. I feel like I'm gonna die, truly. And I start to like flex every bone or every muscle in my body, like, I'm trying to scream, it's just like this whoa kind of thing. It's not happening, I'm not waking up. So I try and close my eyes like I do every other time. And of course this time I can't close my eyes. It just won't happen, like my whole shit is paralyzed. So at this point, this is around the point that I noticed that little loaf of bread pillow has turned into, like morphed into like a centuries old babushka, old hag woman that's holding her knees up to her chest in fetal position like a baby that's just been born. And she opens her eyes, and they're like not human. They're oblong, and the pupils are like stretched across her eyes. And then her mouth opens, and she's got these like interlocking teeth like a piranha. And they're long, and they start opening, and there's like spit between the teeth. And it's getting closer to my face. And it's not because it's like moving towards me, it's because it's getting bigger. And it's like expanding in size right in front of me. And it gets so big and so close that the spit touches my nose and I wake up. And I'm like, oh shit. I run into Maris's bed because we're in 2 different bedrooms because we're at her parents' house because we're moving to Thailand the next day and we didn't have a house. So we have a bathroom. There's a bathroom between the 2 rooms. I run in there and I'm like 5-alarm fire. We have some like Nightmare on Elm Street shit going on right now. You can't go to sleep. I can't go to sleep. You need to keep me awake or I'm gonna die. Like that's what I was saying to her. And she was like, all right, cool, let's do it. We're getting up. And she's sitting up and like I'm like, okay, cool. She's gonna protect me from this. And then she falls asleep, right? Obviously she falls asleep. And then I fall asleep. But this time, or I wake up and it's sleep paralysis again. Like I'm right back into it. This is something I've experienced before, right? It's like the shame, it's not over, right? So I'm on my back this time. So it feels a little bit less like insane, like the edge, like a micromillimeter of the edge is shaved off because I'm like, oh, at least I'm on my back. I know what this feels like, But then I am looking down my body, like through my feet at the bottom of the bed, like a little like gun sight. I'm like looking at the bathroom, and then the door that's open to that room I just came from, and then I hear something, and it's like this sound I'll never forget. It sounded like a burlap sack filled with like an animal or something being pulled across the tile of the bathroom, and then I hear it on the rug, the carpet in the room that I'm in, that I'm paralyzed in. And then, I shit you not, I feel the weight of the bed shift, like it's being pulled. And then I see a hand on this little metal railing at the bottom of the bed. It's like this 4-post metal railing bed with a foot rail. And then I see another hand, and of course this old hag babushka woman like raises her head over like the horizon of the foot of the bed. And then one hand comes off, the other comes off, and it just keeps getting bigger. And this thing is fucking huge. And all at once, it grabs me by my legs and just like rips me out of the bed, and I hit the ground. And it's so visceral, it's so like vivid. I can feel the carpet fibers on my bare back, and I get pulled into the bathroom. And I can feel the coldness of the tile on my back. And I can see her, like, she's like pulling me. I can see her running into the room that we came from. And then she rips me under the bed that I was in the beginning, and then I woke up. And a couple hours later, Maris and I moved to Thailand. And it was like fucking awesome. Like, I had the best time of my entire life, for real. You know, it changed my life. Like, from that moment on, I was a different person. Like, I was ready to do anything. Like, getting outside of my comfort zone was like something that I did every single day there. Everything was new. I traveled the world. It was incredible. And, you know, I never let the anxiety of being outside of my comfort zone take away from my enjoyment of what I was doing. It never let it stop me. And it just started like the edge of the anxiety of being outside my comfort zone just slowly started to go away. And I haven't had sleep paralysis in a while, but it happens from time to time. But I never see anything ever again. I haven't seen that hag or whatever. And you know, years later now, like, Maris is my wife of 10 years. You know? I still think it was the fedora. And we have 2 kids, and she's in Nashville right now. We live in Nashville. Actually, I used to live here. We live in Nashville now. And she still challenges me to this day. She talked me into doing this. And you know, I don't do this. Like, this is fucking terrifying to me right now. I am shaking. Thanks for listening to my story.
Give this man a fedora. All right, Nick.
Hello, hi. Oh, that was great. I didn't think that I would already have so many through lines just sitting in the audience tonight, so this has been wild for me. I'm Nick, I'm 38 years old. I'm an artist, creative, student, and practitioner of the Western mystery tradition in practitioner of ceremonial magic. So that has been my anchor in dealing with all of the paranormal stuff that has been thrown at me in my life. I've lived a lot of versions of my life. Moved to LA about 18 years ago, and about 2 years before that is when my sleep paralysis started. So I've been suffering from this for about 20 years. I've had hundreds of instances, and similarly to some of the other people that I've shared, I've had visualizations, visitations, hallucinations, whatever you want to call them, only a handful of times. I'm so nervous. This is really cool. I'm just really excited to be speaking about this stuff. I've had a lot of paranormal, psychic, prophetic dreams. All of that stuff happened to me since I was very young. And I've also had these sleep paralysis experiences, which I've literally kept in physically separate lists. And honestly, tonight I'm realizing those lists maybe need to merge because you'll see. So the first instance happened when I was just out of high school. I was living in Canada at the time, so I was already working in nightlife as a dancer. And I would go to my ex-boyfriend's house after work late at night. His place was a 2-story condo. It was, for lack of a better term, like a boy house. Always dudes in and out. Never knew who was going to be up late at night playing video games or whatever. I would never sleep well there. Cigarette smoke, it was gross. One night I was sleeping on a mattress on the floor next to him, and I had my little pink Nokia flip phone in my hand. I had fallen asleep like that. And I woke up and felt this presence in the room that just sucked all of the air out. And I looked over at the doorway, and it was the classic tall black figure, taller than a man, but a male presence, notably. And I was just suspended in time with this being for so long, and I realized that my hand had lifted up, the hand that was holding the phone, and the being and I were just staring at each other holding my phone. And what happened next was literally nothing. So much time went by, and I was just like this. And that was the first time I had been visited. It didn't feel like a hallucination because my arm was sitting like this. Cut to a few years later, I'd moved to LA. I had started my career as a professional dancer. I was living with a couple of ballerinas at the time that I had met through a friend of a friend of a friend. I didn't know them. This was honestly one of the only times in my life that I'd ever had a roommate. I've realized with my very unique lifestyle, I need to live alone. I wasn't comfortable here either. I wasn't sleeping well. I was also had a lot of chaos in my life, a lot of drama, a lot of trauma, and just a lot going on, and I was just struggling to get good night's sleep. I remember this particular night, and this part is what really gives me chills because I've never seen the documentary Nightmare on purpose, because when I tend to typically engage with this type of stuff, it does happen to me. I've done all my stuff tonight, so hopefully it won't happen. But that visualization that you showed is going to tie into this next story. I gasped when I saw it for the first time tonight. I'm laying in bed, and I've already fallen asleep. I wake up, I think I've heard something outside or a light turned on in the hallway or something. And I look at the end of my bed, and there's a Doberman pinscher. And that was one of the first things I saw in that visualization. So I've never heard of that happening to anyone else before. And this Doberman pinscher was made out of electricity. Like that static, like the last storyteller was talking about. It was like lightning had been harnessed and was just put into form through static and was making this picture of a Doberman pinscher. It wasn't threatening, it was not friendly, but it felt like it had knowledge about me. I know that sounds really strange, but I felt very seen by it, and it was just like flickering in and out of reality, and kind of making fucked up faces. This actually happened around a time where there was a lot of things going on in my waking life. Paranormal experiences, animal visitations, strange things were going on around this time as well. So that time was extremely memorable. This was 13, 14 years ago at this time. So the next one is probably the most violent. It had happened actually quite recently and quite close to here. I was living in Los Feliz at the time, just off Kenmore and Franklin over here. My dad had just passed away in 2020 from cancer, and it was really tough to take. We didn't get to have a funeral. My mind was fractured, wrought with grief. I was not doing well. I had even tried to see some mediums and psychics, and they were like, girl, you're a mess. We can't read you. You're a complete mess. And I felt it. I was not grounded in my practice yet. I had not really come to terms with what had gone on. So this particular instance, I had fallen asleep as normal. And I woke up and I kind of felt like my sheets were getting kind of tight. Like, you know, when you turn over too many times in your sleep and your sheets get kind of tight around your ankles. And this is why I call them visitations, because this was, again, not a visual thing. I realized that I was having sleep paralysis, the breathlessness, the weight, I couldn't move, but I was being moved. I was turning over and over, and the sheets kept getting tighter. And eventually it was like when you put some produce in a bag at the grocery store and you like wind it up. I was wound up like this and slid across my room. Like shaking even recounting it. And I'd love to tell you that I woke up across the room all disheveled, but I didn't. I woke up just back in bed. A through line that I've noticed through all of these stories as well is that fear will create that terror in reality. And chaos will dissolve that threshold. And it happened to me a lot. It was happening to me back to back to back to back to back. And through grounding my practice, and through my study, and through discipline, and through really honing my body as a tool, they don't happen anymore. I'll fall into it, I'll get the breathlessness, but I haven't had any visualizations or any hallucinations, any visitations at all since. I kind of find it interesting that now that I know what's going on, I'm able to kind of subtly access where it's coming in and get myself out of it a lot quicker. It's almost like it's been a training ground for my consciousness. Anyway, thank you for letting me share. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Nick.
Of course.
The veil is thinner for some of us, and you're one of those people. You described a lot of chaos. Do you think that you were maybe attracting attention from the other side?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
for sure. And I've gotten really into paranormal research lately, and that's been a huge through line with a lot of people. And it's obviously through no fault of your own. Things happen to us. They happen in our lives, and it's difficult to stay above it. But I do think it's a doorway. Yeah.
Are you a lucid dreamer also? Can you steer your dreams?
Yes, yeah, big time. I was in a split custody situation, and I would always be like, okay, if you're having a bad dream, just remember if you're at your mom's house or your dad's house. And that's how I would get out, and I would be able to be like, okay, so what's the through line back to reality? Oh, yeah, and then that's how I would get out, even from when I was super young. Yeah.
Well, Nick, thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you. Wow.
Shout out to Nokia.
Chris, come on up.
Everybody was really brave tonight and went off book, so I felt the pressure to leave it back there, so bear with me. I've had many sleep paralysis experiences, not as many as some, but I wanted to tell you about my first. I was probably 18 or 19, moved out on my own for the first time. This is back in my hometown in Vermont. And we moved into this very old house. It was kind of falling apart. I think it had been a drug house right before we moved in, so it was rough, but that's what you can afford when you're 18 or 19. And it was so old, in fact, that there was a stone pillar out front where you'd like tie up your horse, you know? So it's old. So I didn't think much of the knocks at first. I'd be woken up almost every night by knocking noises in my bedroom. And New Englanders would say the house was settling, so I just brushed it off. And then one night, I woke up to a knock on my nightstand, and something fell off. And so I started to pay attention. I thought, okay, there's something more going on here. So I called up probably my most trusted friend, and he brought his Ouija board.
It's always your trusted friend.
And so we started to dabble a little bit, and we were experimenting. And basically right away we had some sort of contact, but it was very slight. It was, the planchette would move in circles, or it would do a figure eight or something like that. And but the more that we did it, we would start to get some yes or no answers, or we would start to get some words. And over the following weeks and eventually months, this sort of developed into a pattern, a habit. Almost a ritual. Every weekend he'd come over. We'd have a little house party. Other people would be there. We would throw the Ouija board down the coffee table and see what we could stir up. And we were kind of experimenting with this, but it felt like each time whatever we were communicating with got a little bit more. And it grew to the point where it could guess a number that somebody had written on a piece of paper. It would make knocking noises by request. The couch moved. All sorts of things were happening, and it was building. And one night, it was just the two of us, and I decided to try automatic writing, which is where you hold a pen on a paper and are supposed to be able to channel whatever it is through you to write. And sort of similar trajectory. At first, it was sort of just lines and squiggles, and then you'd maybe see a hint of a letter, and then it started to try to form words. And there was a very strange feeling attached to this. I'm holding it in my right hand, and right here on my arm, it felt warm and tingly, about the size of a hand. And so we were doing this, and it was one of those times where everything slows down, right? A minute feels like 10, and we're taking turns sort of asking questions, and it keeps trying to write this word, and it's sort of a ride, a side, it's not quite making sense, but it keeps trying to get the same word. And then eventually it clicks, and it says, "our side." I said, did you write "our side"? And it wrote very clearly in cursive writing that was not my own, "Chris, leave everybody, our side." So that felt like a bit of a peak with the seances, and I was very close with my grandmother, and I would kind of tell her these stories, and she was very much someone in tune with that side of things, but she also was very Catholic, and so she was worried about me and insisted that I take a crucifix home with me. I'm like, all right, that's not my jam, but I'll take it. I love my grandmother. I'm not going to say no, and I hung it over the bed, and it looked kind of cool, and I was like, all right. And life moved on, and life went on. I think anybody who's had like sort of a ongoing paranormal experience, when you tell the story, it feels like there's all this thing, but your daily life is happening throughout it, and that's sort of what happened to me. And after a while, I realized I hadn't heard the knocks in a while. I hadn't been woken up, and I wasn't sure if I had just gotten used to it or what was really going on there. So, called up my buddy, and we brought the Ouija board, and basically was like, what's going on? And it basically said it didn't want to bother me. And I was fascinated by all of these experiences, and so I don't think I thought through what I said next, but I said, feel free to show yourself to me anytime. So the next night, came home late, sort of flopped down in bed, and was laying on my back. Consistent thing, it sounds like. Always sleep on my side, so I knew I hadn't, fallen asleep yet, and I'm laying there. I started to get this weird feeling in my body, and it's kind of like when your leg falls asleep, but it's my entire body. And then it starts to feel warm, and I remember that feeling on my arm during the automatic writing, but now it's my entire body. So my eyes open, and I'm sort of taking in the room, and it felt like my senses were heightened, like the moonlight that was coming in the room was brighter than it should be, and like I could see more than I normally would in the dark. And I'm laying there, and I realize I'm pinned to the bed. It's like I've been glued down. And I'm sort of looking around the room, soaking in this experience, not sure, not scared, not scared, not really sure how to take it. And then over to my left is my bedroom door. And just to the right, there's a shadow. It's about the size of a person. And my first thought is, what's casting that shadow? There's nothing in the way to cast that shadow. And as I'm looking at it, it turns as though it was a person facing the wall. And it has a pure white face, empty eye sockets. And the rest of its body is still shadow. And the shadow sort of goes up over its head, almost like a hood or something up over the top. And I'm just laying there, and I'm looking at it, and it's looking at me, and again, it feels like time slowed down, and it feels like forever, but it's probably just a moment. And I get the thought to say something. I don't know if I meant to speak to this thing or to my roommate in the other room or what, but as soon as a noise barely started to come out, the feeling went away. Everything kind of just went back to normal. I moved out of that house shortly after that, unrelated. Moved across the country, a lot far away from Vermont, but there's this Facebook group that sort of tracks like the local history of my town that I'm a big fan of. I love that kind of stuff. And I saw one day somebody had posted a photo of the brick building that was next door to that house that I lived in, and you could kind of see the house in the photo, and somebody was asking about the history, and it turns out that building was the first Catholic church in our town. And the house next door, my house, was the convent for the nuns. And it all clicked. The crucifix, the shape, the thing up over the head, the pale face. And I was desperate for more information, so I scrolled through the comments, who's adding information here. And one woman said, I own that house, and a nun was killed there. And that's my first sleep paralysis story.
Well, you finally broke the habit. I'm sorry.
In your search for answers for what happened to you, did you go through the whole rabbit hole of sleep studies and parasomnias and REM cycles and muscle atonia as an explanation for sleep paralysis? And if so, did that change your mind about what happened to you?
Well, it's interesting. Your documentary, I saw at the Stanley Hotel when you screened it there, and was the first time I was like, oh shit, this is a thing, as I'm sure most people have had that experience. And I think similar to you, it was like, okay, yeah, science can explain a lot of this, but there's always seems to be that other side of it, that other edge of it. Nothing that I've read or heard about, I feel like really scientifically explains it.
When the film gets made, if there's a small part for a crusty New England neighbor, yeah, that's just the house settling.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you seeing Sister Catherine? There's some things you don't want to mess with.
Well, if you know any producers of paranormal horror films that you could introduce me to, we might be able to work something out.
Why do you think I had you sign that release? Thank you very much.
I knew it.
Chris, thank you for your story.
Thank you so much.